Okay, so welcome so much to this training on peer reviews in Canvas. My name is Dr. Karen Crozer. I'm a DE specialist at Mission College and also an associate professor of English. So today we're just going to kind of cover some of the basics of peer review. And then I just want to talk a little bit about groups because one of the things you can do is have peer reviews happen within groups. So I think it would be good to go over both of them. I went ahead and put a handout in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and screen share that now. And as I was saying earlier, thank you so much for making the time to be here on a Friday right before Thanksgiving. I know it's a kind of crazy time in the world.
Mhm.
Okay, let me go ahead here.
Yeah, good.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. Okay, so when should you think about using peer review? Might be a question if you haven't used it before. But a peer review is going to enable students to provide feedback on another student's assignment submission. So, peer reviews are a tool that allow communication between students and can help students master the concepts of course and learn from each other. And you can either choose whether peer reviews show students' names or whether they display anonymously. So for me as an English teacher, I use peer reviews quite a bit to have my students look at each other's writing. But you could have them look at any type of writing or any type of assignment, whether it's drawing or a scientific lab or creating a flyer. Uh, it could be anything. And so Canvas has this, makes it just a little bit easier to do the peer review process online. Um, okay, so a couple key features. When you create a peer review assignment, you can assign the peer reviews manually, so you can pick who each person reviews, or you can have Canvas assign them automatically. And so, like I mentioned at the beginning, group assignments can also be assigned as peer reviews. So you can have students just peer reviewing within their groups. Once the peer review has been assigned, students can view a notification in their dashboard to-do bar or their activity stream. And as long as they have the notification set up, they will also receive an email notification. Students do not receive a grade for completing a peer review. So if you want to assign extra points for peer reviews, which I always do to make sure they do them, you have to create a no submission assignment in Gradebook and assign the points manually. Um, and then the peer review page for the assignment will show the names of the students who have completed the peer reviews, and peer reviews can be anonymous. So let me go ahead and stop here so I can share my other screen and show you what I mean. And welcome, Elham. Thank you for joining. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share. Let's see here. Try to share my Canvas screen here. Okay. So this is one of my classes, and I'm just going to make a fictional assignment right now just for the purposes of showing you. So I'll just go here and do it. So I'm going to create a new assignment. So let's just call it peer review of rough draft. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And actually, probably what I would name this is actually submit rough draft. And then I would have some instructions here about what I want them to submit. So my instructions would go here, right? Whatever I want to say. And then if I'm scrolling down, so you want to give them a certain number of points for submitting a draft. Let me just go ahead and make this assignment. So let's say you're going to give them 20 points. Then down here, they are going to have a submission, of course. They're going to submit something online. Now, the type of assignment you are having them do a peer review on may make you want to limit the types of options that you let them submit. So, for instance, in my class, I have them peer review writing. So I don't look for media recordings because they're not submitting a video or a song. And I don't really have them submit website URLs. Text entry works if it's not a paper. For me, if it's a paper, I want to be able to, the students to be able to see each other's formatting, such as double spacing and where the line breaks are and the page breaks are. So I usually limit it to file uploads. For submission attempts, I just allow unlimited because sometimes, students upload the wrong file and I want them to be able to fix it. This is where I would click if was a group assignment, but for now, I'm just going to make it a whole class assignment where I'm going to require a peer review. So when I require that, you're going to see that a couple of options pop up here. So I could go through and manually assign peer reviews to students. So I could say, I want Joe to do Sarah and Manuel's reviews. But most of the time, I don't need that level of control. It's not so important to me exactly who they review as long as they're reviewing someone's. So personally, I usually do this one, automatically assign peer reviews. And what that does is it has Canvas automatically assign the peer reviews for you. Now, the number of peer reviews you want to do is completely up to you. I usually do 2 or 3, depending on the length of the assignment and how much time I'm giving them. So for example, here, I'll just say 2 o'clock, or not 2, sorry, not 2 o'clock, 2 users. Okay. I'm going to come back to this. This is when assign reviews. This is when I'm going to tell Canvas when I want that computer system to assign all those reviews. So I usually have students' names there for peer reviews, but if it's a concern and you'd prefer everyone to be anonymous, that's when you would go ahead and click here. So let me just stop for a second and ask, are there any questions so far? Okay, let me pull your pictures over so I can see them a little bit closer. Okay. And welcome, Hossein. So we are just kind of going through the basics of peer review right now. So what we kind of had gone over is that once you make an assignment, you're going to click require peer reviews. You can assign them manually, but I was saying for me, I don't normally need that level of control of picking precisely who they review. So I usually do it automatically. For me, I normally assign 2 to 3 reviews per user. And then for now, I'm going to leave this blank and I'll show you why in a second. And then this is if you wanted the peer reviews to be anonymous. So instead of saying, Joe made this comment on Sarah's paper, it would just say anonymous made the comment on Sarah's paper. But I don't usually have much of a problem with students using their own names. So I just usually keep that unchecked myself. So let's say, for example, that I was going to make this due tonight. So I'm going to do tonight at 11:59 p.m. Okay. So here's the thing that's been my experience with peer reviews. If I go ahead and I leave this blank up here, remember when I want the computer to assign the reviews, it will basically assign the reviews the second it ticks over to November 21st midnight. So the very next minute, as soon as it ticks over from November 20th, 11:59 to midnight, the system will assign all the peer reviews. Here's why this has been a problem for me. Our population in LACCD is, I believe, 69% low income. We have a lot of students who are dealing with slow internet, Wi-Fi, or computer problems. We have a lot of students who have work that may go late. So the problem that I ran into when I let the system just do it the very next minute is that I would have students contact me and say my internet was going slow, or, I had some kind of work emergency, and they would submit 1 to 2 minutes late, and the system would have already assigned all the peer reviews. Now, you could argue that they need to be responsible and they should know in advance to try to upload in advance. And if that's how you feel about it, that's fine. You can leave this blank, and basically the very next minute, Canvas will assign all the peer reviews. The thing that's kind of a pain is if you have someone who had a legitimate emergency that made them submit, a few minutes late. Now you're going to have to go in manually and try to assign them people because the computer already did it and everybody already has the right amount of students assigned. So it's just a little bit of extra work. So the way that I handle it personally is that I have Canvas assign peer reviews 2 hours after the deadline. Now, I don't tell students that because human nature, when we know we have a grace period, we tend to use it. But I do give them an unspoken grace period in case their Wi-Fi is slow, in case there's an emergency. So what I would do if it was me personally, and this is just from my experience using peer reviews, is I would ask Canvas to go in and assign peer reviews at 2 a.m. the next day, the 21st. So you can see there's about a 2-hour period here where if somebody's Wi-Fi is a little quirky or they have a work emergency, I'm giving them a little bit of a grace period where the computer will still assign them peer reviews. So basically, Canvas will still accept peer reviews after this due date up until this time. And then at exactly 2 a.m., that's when the computer will assign all the peer reviews. So you could make that a bigger grace period. I've seen some people do 5 or 6 p.m. I've seen some people do no peer review grace period at all. And I have done that in the past myself. I just found that it was a little bit more work for me and that I didn't really mind giving them a slight grace period. Um, the other thing that I've seen teachers do is that if someone submits late, they just check every morning after the assignment to see if there's been late work submitted. That's assuming they'll accept it, right? Because not everyone does. But if they do accept late work, they will go in and manually add students. So this is kind of what it looks like from the teacher side. I personally don't fill in this information. I just leave the assignment open. But if they submit too late, I'll just leave a comment saying, you submitted too late. But you could also, make this match whatever you said for Canvas, which is the 2 a.m. You could have the assignment completely close. And that's kind of what it would look like on the teacher end. And then the one other piece that we'll talk about a little bit later in the training is that you could make this a group assignment. So maybe they're working together on something, or you always have them in a specific lab group or a specific writing group for the semester. Then you could go ahead and make it a group assignment. What's going to happen then is the computer is only going to assign peer reviews within that group. So like, let's say I have a group of 6 students, they'll only be assigned each other's work, and the next group will only be assigned each other's group. So that's what it looks like on the teacher side. So let me stop for a second and ask if you have questions about this. Yes, go ahead, Hossein.
Even though it might sound a little bit strange because I was late a little bit to participate in this. I apologize for it. I didn't
No
have the link.
problem, no problem.
My question is that when we are assigning a peer review, basically we are assigning students to check each other's work.
Yes, exactly. So they're going to, and it can be any kind of work. So as an English teacher, for me, it's always written work because so much of what we do is written. But it could be, so you missed the little part up here I was talking about, so which is fine, no worries, about the types of things you could do it with. But let's say, I don't think any of us are speech teachers, but let's say you were a speech or a singing teacher. Then you could have the student upload a recording of themselves singing or giving a speech, or, you know, maybe in a script writing class, maybe they're making a short film, and you could have them review each other's media. If you were in a course where you were having them make a website or a portfolio, you could have them just submit the URL, and then the students will critique it. And if the formatting doesn't matter, so for me as an English teacher, I like them to submit files because I want to see the formatting, the MLA format. But if all that matters is the words, the text itself, then you can just accept a text entry. And basically what the student will see is they'll be able to see the file or, you know, the text, whatever it is you picked. And then they can either leave sidebar comments, just like we do, sort of in SpeedGrader, we can leave the sidebar comments, or they can annotate directly on the file if it is a file. So, you know, like an MLA paper, they can actually annotate directly on it. Does that help?
Yes, I have one more question.
Oh, sure.
Let's say that it's a health improvement project and it has different sections. So for each section of that project, I can assign different types of review.
Yes. So you could do it two ways. You could do, if it's sort of a capstone project, maybe you have them peer review a different piece every couple of weeks. So that's kind of I've done something like that before. Another way that I've done it in a writing class is I'll have them submit an outline, peer review each other's outlines, and then a full rough draft and review each other's rough drafts. So it's kind of up to you, the scope of whether, how big of a project you want them to look at one time. And then I find that I have to just give them pretty precise instructions about what I'm expecting to, and I'll show you that in a minute. Because if I don't, if I just say peer review this person's paper and I don't give further guidance, I usually get a cornucopia of responses, and not all of them are quality. Some of them will be a couple words long, kind of like, hey, liked your paper. So that's sort of the other thing that I think about with these. Does that help?
Yes, and do you assign credit points for the peer review? I mean, how do you entice the students to do such a thing?
Yes, I do. I do. And so the one thing that one of the things I find a little bit clunky about the peer review process in Canvas is that it doesn't allow me here to assign points for the peer reviews. So this 20 points is for the draft that they submitted, that they're submitting a rough draft. So what I have to do is go in and make another assignment. So I'll show you actually right now. Here, let me cancel this for a minute. I'm going to pretend this is a separate assignment. So I'm going to say, yeah, peer review of rough draft. That's actually fine. And so down here, I will give them another 20 points or whatever it is to peer review. And then the thing that's different is there's no submission. So that's just me looking to see if they did the peer review and adding additional points. This always confuses them. So I usually have to put some kind of disclaimer up here that says, you know, please do not submit anything. I will be looking at your peer reviews and awarding points. And this will show up as a separate assignment. And then I just have to go manually through and look at their peer reviews and assign points. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does. And so manually for every single student, you check to make sure that they have responded and then come back and give them a credit point.
Yes. And like I said, it's a little clunky because I usually have to have more than one tab open to see it all. So I'll show you, in this class, I do peer reviews. So let me see if I can just pull up an example here. I think the first one I did was here. Okay, so just as an example, so for paper one in this class, I had them do a peer review first. So like I said, if I don't give instructions on what I want, I don't get good responses, or I don't get consistent responses. So one student will do 10 words, another student will do, 500. So let me zoom in actually a little bit more than this. Okay. So this is an example of what I do. I say for each peer review assignment, you will review the work of 2 peers. You will offer feedback on thesis outlines and rough drafts, because eventually they do rough drafts. After reading their work, you will leave your feedback in the comment sidebar. The student will be able to see it and use your feedback to improve. I will also be able to see it and award points based on the quality of your peer review. Now, this is kind of, I know you kind of walked in as I was talking about this, Hossein, so hopefully this made sense. But if you don't submit your peer review by the deadline, Canvas is not going to automatically assign you peer reviews. So I always try to explain to students, I don't tell them about the 2-hour grace period, but I do give them that. But beyond that, if you submit late and you don't have, a verified reason, then I usually don't accept it. And that's, I have been pretty flexible about assignments in 2020 because it is crazy year. But for me with peer reviews, timely feedback is important, because if you give feedback after the assignment's due, you might still learn something, but it's not helpful to the person. So this is where I explain, if you don't submit your own assignment on time, Canvas will not assign you peer reviews. So I make sure they understand, look, if you miss part A and you don't turn in the rough draft or the outline, you're going to also miss part B. You're not going to be able to peer review. So I explain you will only receive rough drafts to peer review if you submitted your own rough draft on time. Please submit your thesis outlines and rough drafts before the deadline to get full points. If you are even a few minutes late in uploading your draft, Canvas will not assign peer reviews to you. Now, I do give them a little bit of a grace period, but like I was saying earlier, I don't usually tell them, just because it's human nature to use a grace period that you happen to know about. So I let them know that I expect it on time, and then I give them just a little bit of wiggle room in case they have bad Wi-Fi or something else going on. And then the other thing I do is I tell them what I want them to respond with, because a lot of them I find haven't done peer reviews before, and so they're unsure of how to do it. So I usually give a word minimum, and that's because if I don't, I give people who write one sentence and just say, cool, dude, or something like that, right? So I tell them I want it to be meaningful, at least 75 words long. And that's just sort of arbitrary, but it's just to sort of make sure that there's enough robust writing there to be a decent peer review. And then I would like them in writing to give one positive comment at least. And so I call that appreciation. What strengths do you see in your peers' work that you can call attention to and praise? The strengths might be emerging and not fully realized, but look for the places where they have the makings of a strong outline or draft. Um, and then I also, of course, want them to do constructive criticism. So I say guidance for the next revision. What comments would you offer about how to improve their thesis, outline, or rough draft? Think about the macro issues, such as how they develop their ideas and arguments, as well as micro issues such as spelling, grammar, or punctuation errors. And then I usually remind them for an English class, look back at the essay prompt to make sure that what they've written actually addresses what the teacher's asking for, and say, if they don't, point that out. And then I say, don't forget to review your classmates' comments on your own writing too, once you receive them. Now, again, just because students sometimes feel a little hesitant the first time, I tend to just give them a little extra advice. So I say, if you're having trouble coming up with ideas of what to say, here's a sheet with peer review questions and links to, a resource I found online that you can ask yourself while reading a peer's paper and writing a response. And then I also found a captioned video on how to peer review a paper. So I add that as well. And then sort of the last thing, which is on the handout, and you know what, I'll re-put it in the chat, Hossein, because it might not be appearing for you. But the other thing that I find that students really struggle with the first time especially is how to find their peer reviews. Every time I do a peer review for the first time in a class, I would say, I get at least 5 emails asking me, I can't find my peer review, where is it? So I've created I've created this page that's actually, I've copy and pasted in the handout, and I'll re-upload that for you. But I actually explained to them how to find the peer review. And this is just after, years of emails about where to look. I tried to at least put it in. So I say the easiest way to find your peer reviews is by looking at your course stream. To find your course stream, please visit. And I have, a Canvas page here on course streams. And then I say, remember, peer reviews will pop up 2 hours after they're due. This is because I have a 2-hour grace period. That's why it's 2 hours. If you submitted your own outline or draft on time, and then if you are unable to locate your course stream, check out this additional guide to finding peer review, another Canvas page that helps you. And then I say, for the purposes of our course, you do not need to annotate or fill out a rubric. So if you want to further sort of customize your peer review, you can require students to annotate directly on the paper. So that there's little, kind of like we can do, as you're writing comments right on the paper with, and you can also have them fill out a rubric. I don't usually do this just because the more technical steps I seem to add, this process seems to already be sort of a stumbling block for a lot of students. I think just because the way the tech is, it's not as intuitive as I wish it would be. Let me put it that way. It's a little clunky on sort of both sides, I think, on our side and on their side. So I just find that the more sort of layers of you need to know how to annotate, and now you need to know how to rubric, the more sort of confused or more they get, or more potential for confusion. But you could have them do either of those things. And then I just say, go ahead and leave a sidebar comment. So let me go ahead just for a moment here, and I'll re-upload this file for you, Hossein, because I think you joined after I upload it. And then the other thing I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste these instructions into the chat in case you want to borrow any of them. Oh, is it not going to let me paste? Oh, it might be too long. You know what? I'll put it into a Word document and then I'll upload it in a little bit. Okay. So the next thing I want you to do, or I want to show you, is what it looks like on our end. But let me just stop for a minute and ask, are there any questions you want to ask so far? Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, perfect. Feel free, I should have said this earlier, but feel free at any time if you have a question to interrupt me or write something in the chat, and I will absolutely be happy to take your questions. Okay, so let's go here for a second. I believe this was yes, this is a peer review assignment I had. Okay, so this is an example of sort of the instructions that I put in. For an assignment like this, I tell them that I want an outline, that I want it as a Word document or PDF. This is important with peer reviews because if I don't tell them this, some people do Pages, some people do Google Docs, and then Pages in particular is a problem because that's a Mac thing. And if you don't have a Mac, oh, sorry, I don't know why this keeps zooming in. If you don't have a Mac, you can't open it. So I tell students to do either one or the other and avoid sort of the Mac specific things. And then I give them some tips on outlines and a sample thing. Okay, and then the way I set this assignment up, just to show you sort of the back end here, is I let them submit files. I restricted it to PDF or documents. These are both Microsoft Word endings, so that I didn't get any files that I thought other students couldn't open. And then I do still run plagiarism on it. I mean, it's up to you. But down here, you can see that I required peer reviews and I automatically assigned them. So, oh, this one, I guess I gave a longer timeline. Every once in a while I do that. This was due October 11th at 11:59. And it looks like I gave them sort of an extra long window. I can't remember why I did that, but I think maybe it was just a rough week and I knew some of my students were dealing with medical issues. But that's what that part looks like. And then now let's actually look at what you see as a professor. So for SpeedGrader, what you're going to see here, this is manual submission. So you can see the paper, scroll down. Down here, you can see the comments. So there should be 2 comments here. So one way that you can grade them is just to skim this and then read these and then mark if anybody is really missing the mark. So obviously there's a short comment here, but she added it on to this. If this was her whole comment, that would be an issue, obviously. But because it's with this, she's hit the word minimum. And then I kind of just, read this quickly, see if there's, it looks like at least 75 words. Did it say something positive? Did it say something negative? And so I can just scroll through like this and look and see if any of the comments are, first I'm kind of looking to make sure that the outline is fairly appropriate. I'm not necessarily reading every word in depth, but I'm looking to see that it is an outline, that they didn't just phone it in. And then I'm looking over here at these comments. And then these people didn't submit, so they are not going to get peer reviews if they did not submit. So then we have Megan's and etc. So you can see all the different outlines in the comments here. So this is the one view that I often have open. But I also like this other view, which is the peer reviews. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in a new tab so you can see. This is where I can see if Manual did all his peer reviews. So over here, if you remember when I was going through, I could tell what Manual's draft looked like. See, but I couldn't easily see the peer reviews that he left his classmates. That's one thing that I kind of wish Canvas did differently. I wish that I could look at his draft and his peer reviews at the same time. But I can't do that in one screen in Canvas. So that's why I usually have this one open. So now I can see Manual did both of his peer reviews. Now, all I see is the check mark, right? So this doesn't tell me, was his comment robust? Was it 75 words? Did it have a positive or a negative? But I can see that he did it. Now, if I wanted to look individually, now I can click here and I can see his comment for Destiny. And then I can scroll back, click back, go to Vivian, and I can see his comment for Vivian. So sometimes I just click through like this. I go back and forth on which way is sort of the least annoying, because I feel like both ways have some kind of clicking around. But here I can see at least, who has done them. And then if none assigned, that means that these students didn't submit anything. So they weren't assigned peer reviews. I think everybody did their peer reviews. Oh, here's a good example. So this student was having technical difficulties. She didn't actually do her peer reviews. So what you can see is there's this exclamation point with a circle. So what this means is that she submitted the draft, but she never completed her peer reviews. So normally what I do when I'm grading is I go through and I assign points for the outline itself. So see how this says paper 2 outline, it's out of 15 points. And I gave him the full 15. I give people the 15 for the draft. But then in my actual grade book, let me see if I can find this. Actually, I think it might be back here. Paper 2 outline. Let's see. Okay, so here's an assignment or an example of one of those assignments where I'm not collecting anything. So they had the outlines submitted, and then I needed them to peer review them by this date. The 14th, I think, was a Wednesday. So I usually give them at least a couple of days, just because everyone has different work schedules, family schedules. I normally don't give people a 1-day turnaround. you know, that's expecting that people can just drop everything in one day. And that's usually not realistic in 2020 with our students. So I usually give them at least 3 or 4 days. But here you can see in my instructions, I wrote, no need to submit anything here. If you review 2 classmates, I will award credit. You will need to leave feedback on each outline that is at least 75 words long. And then I repeat this, the instructions again. Now, if I could go straight to my grade book, or I can do the speed grader here. Now, for most people, if they did it correctly, they aren't going to get a comment from me. Usually, you could leave a comment like great peer review or something like that. But normally I just leave a comment here if they are not doing the peer review correctly, which it looks like actually everybody did this round. But sometimes I would leave a comment that's like, hey, John, thanks for your peer reviews. Make sure you are hitting 75 words, a comment, and doing appreciation and room for improvement so that you can get full points. And if this fictional person, you know, was doing short comments and they weren't following my instructions, then I would just sort of decide for myself how many points I wanted to give them. And if I felt they put in some effort, but they didn't follow instructions, maybe I'd give them half points for the peer reviews. Okay. So, okay, great. I just saw a comment here from Abdullah. That's fine. Okay. So let me go ahead and stop here for a second
Can
and
I
ask.
ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead if you have questions.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So first of all, I know the major benefits of students peer reviewing each other, but it might not be that applicable for some courses, right?
Yes, yes. And I think some courses it's just not going to lend itself as well. And I think it's kind of just you have to weigh the benefits and the drawbacks, because for writing it's obviously really helpful, but I can see fields where it might be a lot harder or less helpful. And then I also would say it's a little bit time consuming. So the more you do peer reviews and you learn Canvas's system, I think the faster it gets. But for me, I would recommend like the first time you do a peer review, I would do it maybe only once or twice a semester and not in a giant class. So not in a over enrolled class of 80, because it tends to be a little bit confusing and clunky sometimes. So it's sort of like a trade-off of whether um, you know, you have the bandwidth to sort of deal with the clunkiness. And then I just felt like it was harder the first few times and then it got easier. So that's why I would just say if you have a class that's smaller that might be a good place to start in case there's confusion so that you kind of don't have to deal with 80 emails asking questions.
And there is one thing that I do through my discussions, and I don't know that if peer review lends itself to discussions as well. I don't know if it's only for the assignments or for discussions, it can be used as well. But the whole project of my discussions is that they basically have to respond to each other, like being in the classroom, and it's a kind of a peer review without calling them a peer review. They're actually a peer review.
Right.
And they have to use the primary research articles and do the comment and even corrections, different type of opinions. So that was my question, that first of all, does it lend itself to discussions? And second, that having discussions is kind of having peer reviews. So I might.
Absolutely. That's a good question. I've never, I could try right now and see if discussion would let me add a peer review. Let me go ahead and leave here. I do think that if you are able to accomplish that in discussions, there's no, hold on. I have most of my discussions in the 101 section. I don't think I actually have any here, but let's see if it's going to even have that as an option. So yeah, I don't think there's any option here. There's really just that this is a group discussion option. I don't see anything here for peer review. But I think that if you have found another way for peer review that works, like you're saying, discussions, um, a lot of times kind of function like a peer review. I would say if that's working for you, then there's no reason that you have to change necessarily. I think that the peer review Canvas function tends to work well for longer pieces. So where it's a 4 or 5 page paper, where it's going to be harder to kind of, yeah, you could discuss it in a discussion, but it'd be really sort of clunky and harder because it's so long. That's when I think that the Canvas function is more ideal for a longer assignment, where someone really needs to take, a lot of time to look through a fuller draft. That's where I would use the Canvas. But for shorter things like, if they're just kind of providing feedback and it's just, a paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs, I think you could easily do that on discussion and you'd get a lot of the same benefits. So I think that if discussion's working for you, and you're doing shorter things, there's no need to switch. But if, for instance, at the very end where they're making this document you were kind of talking about, and you want them to look at the whole thing, then I would use the actual Canvas function for
Exactly,
peer
for
review.
their final report, and it will help them to do even better in final report because they are helping each other. Yes,
Absolutely.
thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah. So I definitely think it's kind of it's a useful feature, but it will be more useful for some classes than others. And there's lots of different ways to get students to review each other's work. Um, so yeah, I would definitely mostly recommend this for longer things. Um,
And
and
then every semester when I evaluate my class, asking the students, they certainly appreciate those because they say that what we learned from discussion is unbelievably tremendous amount of information, because in my class everybody uses primary research articles. So by end of every semester I just got used to it, receiving so many thank you emails that
oh,
yeah, so that's really, and through the years and years, it worked really well for me. So I'm
yeah,
gonna use the peer review for my final,
yes.
report.
That's what I would do. And I would it sounds like the discussions are working for the shorter. So I would say why fix it if it's not broken, right? And just keep it that way. Cause I mean the real benefit is just them interacting and looking at each other's work. And like you said, that doesn't have to happen through this precise tool. So yeah, I would maybe save it for the very end when you have long drafts. So
Thank you.
yeah. And then Rocio and Elham, did you have questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay, great. Let me just really briefly touch on groups just because those can be used. So let me stop screen sharing for just a second and go back to that handout. And I'll just go over it briefly. And then if there's no questions, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Oh, just to let you know, here I put in the instructions that I've developed just for helping students find their peer reviews. And then these are just a couple of more links. Canvas unfortunately doesn't have a great video for instructors about peer reviews. So I don't have one of those because they don't have one of those, but they have good sort of instructions here on how to use peer reviews, how to create a peer review, and then tips. So if you are stuck or have questions, I recommend those. And then just really briefly, I'm going to just go over groups and then we'll see if we have any final questions. But groups are just going to be when, as an instructor, you need groups to either for assignments or in-class work where you're asking them to work together. You can use it to facilitate long semester-long projects so that students can communicate and iterate on documents there. So for instance, I mean, Hossein, what you are doing is definitely working. And that's actually, I do whole class peer reviews too, but I know other teachers who would say, I'm going to split my class of 40 into 4 groups of 10 or something. And then they're going to always just respond to each other in discussions or assignments. And then you can also do student run study groups. where they can sort of create their own groups that they join if they want help on something. And then to create a group set within students, you're just going to click the people link in course navigation, and I can show you that in a second. And there's going to be an add group set button. And within the group set, there's lots of different fields that you can fill out. And then you're going to have a name. And then you can manually create groups. So if you want, let's say you tested them and you want everyone on a certain skill level to be together or something, maybe you would manually set the group. For me, I usually do automatic. You can assign group leaders. I usually don't, but you can. And you can, let's see, anytime you have an assignment, basically you can choose this is a group assignment checkbox. And then if you ever need to create a new group category, you can do that by clicking new group category from within the assignment page. So some people have multiple groups per class per semester. I personally would probably get a little overwhelmed with that. If I do groups at all, it's usually just one set. But here's some more resources, group overview video, what are groups, and this is the group overview for students. So you can kind of see what it looks like on their end. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute and go back just briefly to Chrome. So if I were to go into this class and choose people, you can see there's this big blue button up here that says group set. So let's say I wanted them to only peer review, you know, maybe they have, I set up groups for peer reviews. So I want them to always peer review in the same groups. I'm not going to allow self sign up. That would only really be for a study group where I'm letting students join, you know, opt in to join. And then I could say I'm going to split the students into, maybe I'll say 5. Well, let's see, I'll say 6 groups. I'm not going to assign a group leader just because I don't really see the need for that. But then I hit save, and then my groups are going to start being created, which is going to take a second here. And then you can see that Canvas has created these groups. And if I hit the little arrow, I can see who's in them. And then, you know, it's very rare that I would have to do this, but let's say there's a conflict or something between 2 of my students. I can grab the triple, or those aren't triple, sorry, the 8, the 8 dots. And then I can actually move them around a little bit if I want. And then all those groups will be there. So then once I created those, now if I went back to an assignment, created an assignment and, you know, blah, 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 blah. Now I can go in here and I can say, this is a group assignment. And I have to, for group assignments, I have to decide whether to assign grades to each student individually or as a group. And then I would just say peer review groups. Or if I wanted to create a new category of groups, I could do that here. But for me, I don't know, having multiple categories of groups would confuse me, I think, over time. So I usually only do one. So then I could also require peer reviews. But then if I made it a group assignment, they'd be peer reviewing within those groups only. It wouldn't be like anyone could be peer reviewing anyone in the class, and it's random. It would be still random, but within their groups, they would get just assigned those people. So I know it's kind of a lot of different things about groups that I'm throwing at you in a short amount of time, but do you have any sort of questions or concerns about that?
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead.
When you created the group, sorry,
I know I'm
when
going
you
fast.
created a group, you go to the people, you created a group. That
Yes.
groups that they are created, every time that you're assigning any assignment, those groups are the groups that they're going to be participating in that assignment.
Well, that's an option. So if you didn't click this is a group assignment, it would just be you know,
Individual.
everybody. But any assignment that you wanted them to be in that specific group, whether it's a peer review or not, you could just choose this is a group assignment and then the group set name that you picked.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Is it possible to have that document emailed to us?
Sure. Can you put your email for me in the chat?
Sure. Hold on a second. I am on my cell phone, so not my computer.
Oh, okay,
So
yeah,
let me see if I
no
can
problem.
find that. Yeah, let me see where is. Oh, chat. There you go.
And then let me see, because I can also send you, what was the instructions I was gonna?
Send us everything, even the writings that you have.
I'll send you my instructions for peer review too, just so that you can
Yeah.
see kind of how I set that up.
Especially that it's written by an English guru like yourself.
I don't know, guru might be overstating it, but thank you. Okay, great. So let's see, Elham, Asili, who, Rocio, do you need one, an email?
No, you already posted on the chat and I got it from there.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. All right. So then let me just copy and paste this for myself.
Because the problem is that while I'm here and you are here, it seems that I learned everything. But as soon as you disappear, I know that I'm gonna have
No,
difficult.
I know. Yeah, that's always the problem with these trainings, because it's one thing to hear somebody say, "Oh, do this," and it's another thing to actually go into Canvas and try to do it. So, yeah, and feel free to hold on, sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I copied this last email. Okay.
As a matter of fact, students that they take courses online, you don't know how many times they ask me that, even though this is technology, but please less technology, make it less technical for us.
I know. It's so hard right now. So much going on too in the world. So dealing with technology too is rough. But yes, feel free to email me. And I'll send you Alham and Hossein, I'll go ahead and send you those documents. But if you need
Thank
to
you.
reach out to me at some point, I just dropped my email in the chat. It's krozer@laccd.edu. So feel free to reach out to me if you need anything.
Oh, thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem. Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
We'll be having another sessions with you because this is continuous. I mean, there is number 2 that I have to register for and number 3.
Oh yeah, so I'm doing a series on accessibility. So it's the next 3 Tuesdays. I did the first one this Tuesday, but there's 3 more Tuesdays at 3 p.m. So if you look in the VRC, feel free to join me there too. And I really appreciate you coming out on a Friday and being
Thank you.
here. So thank you so much for your time. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
No, thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Okay,
Have
no
a good
problem.
weekend.
You too.
You
Nice
have
to
a
see all of
wonderful
you.
weekend.
Thank you. You
All
Thank
too.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
It was really nice, and hopefully that we're gonna, there is so many programs. I think that since and then what makes